Hi, I'm Sagan Goodpaster from the STEM Education Department at the University of Kentucky's College of Education. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the beginnings of my dissertation research, which is focused on utilizing outdoor classrooms for science instruction, specifically looking at the factors that influence teachers' pedagogical decisions to take their students outside. And so outdoor education has cycled in and out of the K-12 curriculum for more than a century. And there's also informal outdoor learning opportunities that we're familiar with as well. So it can be a bit tricky to define outdoor education. I tend to specify school-based outdoor education to emphasize the fact that I'm really interested in looking at the use of outdoor classrooms or utilizing the schoolyard as a whole, or maybe even utilizing spaces within walking distance of a school if green space isn't available, like in an urban setting where maybe there's a park across the street that teachers could walk to. But it needs to be something that's accessible, that's easily utilized at any point in time, hopefully repeatedly, and that doesn't require any additional fees or transportation or any of those sorts of considerations. So the outdoor education definition that I prefer is the one you see here from Meals and Washburn. And I like that it really connects outdoor education to science education by specifying that the outdoors utilizes experiments and observations. And also it talks about connecting to nature and desiring to conserve, which relates to environmental education, which is a very closely related but separate field. Environmental education can take place both indoors and outdoors, but it specifically kind of builds that connection to nature and that conservation aspect, ideally. So this definition of outdoor education really encompasses both of those connections and really looks at the field holistically. And so when we talk about outdoor education in this sense, the content that's typically addressed involves life science and environmental science topics, as well as some physical science topics. And the skills that students develop in working outside really parallel the science and engineering practices from NGSS, like observation and actually planning and carrying out investigations, collecting and analyzing data, and sometimes they're even involved in biological sampling techniques. So all of this helps make science meaningful for students so that they're really seeing why the topics that they're learning are important to learn. And they are collecting authentic data, not just collecting some random numbers just so they can practice graphing. It's things that they actually see and measure, and they learn something about their natural world from that. They begin to see how science connects to their everyday life, and they're engaged in inquiry in that process as well. And so there have been several studies in the research that show that students who participate in outdoor activities show much greater gains in their content knowledge, as well as in having more positive environmental attitudes compared to their peers who only learn the same topics in an indoor setting. So it really benefits them scholastically. And we also know that it benefits students holistically because time outside helps benefit their mental and their physical health, and it helps with their social emotional development when they're working with their peers to carry out these investigations and to collect this data. And it really starts to address the nature deficit disorder, a term that was coined by Richard Louv, that really addresses the disconnect that we're seeing in the younger generations and nature, because kids are spending less time outside than ever before, and they're not building that connection to the environment, which is really concerning when we think about all of the environmental issues that are going on in our world that we need more research to address. And we see these kids who have this disconnect. So we want to start to address that, and giving opportunities for them to learn outside during the school day can really begin to do that. But even with these benefits, we know that there are also lots of barriers teachers have to overcome to teach outside. And so the safety of their students, concerns about weather conditions, all of those are definitely barriers. But we also see things like limited time for science because teachers have so much pressure on them for other things that they don't get a lot of time to teach science, especially at the elementary level. And with that comes the accountability pressure for standardized testing, that there's just such a crowded curriculum already that teachers struggle to find time to fit these outdoor opportunities in. And some teachers feel that they lack the confidence or the knowledge to take students outside. So maybe they're not very comfortable outside, or maybe they like to go outside and they like the idea, but they don't know that much about the natural world themselves. So they're not sure how they could effectively teach outside. And so we know that there are teachers who are interested in outdoor education and who just kind of get hung up in one or more of these barriers and don't end up implementing it. And we also know that there are teachers who are interested in teaching outside and are able to overcome these barriers and take their students outside and implement those experiences successfully. So the question really becomes, why do we see this difference, and why are some teachers able to overcome those barriers, but others are not? And so in outdoor education research, we don't have a lot of answers yet. But in environmental education, we see the model of environmental education commitment from Shuman and Ham that does address the same question in the realm of EE. So they wanted to know why some teachers overcome barriers and implement environmental education in the classroom and others do not. And these are the factors that they proposed are most influential of that. So life experiences throughout their life, their attitudes toward teaching environmental education, as well as subjective norms, which really kind of relates to what their perception of what society wants them to do or doesn't want them to do. And so in this case, society would be like the school principal, their fellow teachers, their students' parents, those sorts of outside influences of, if you feel like the outside influences are supportive of integrating EE in this case, or outdoor education or whatever, then if you feel like they are supportive of this and want you to do this, then you're more likely potentially to do that. And then the last factor is perceived behavioral control. And so perceived behavioral control is essentially self-efficacy. It's the teacher's confidence in implementing EE in this case. So all of these factors feed in together to teachers' commitment or their intention to teach environmental education. They still have to overcome those barriers, but the stronger these factors are, the more committed to environmental education the teachers will be, and the more likely they will be to overcome those barriers. And there have been several different studies in the EE literature that operationalize this model, and these factors do seem to contribute to teachers' decisions. But one factor that this model does not address that I think is very important to consider is pedagogical content knowledge. And so this relates specifically to teachers' decisions of what they're going to do in their classroom and what they think is going to best help their students learn. So Magnusson identified 5 components of PCK specific to science, which you can see here in the white boxes, that their orientation to teaching science can influence their PCK or is involved in their PCK. So this has to do with, like, if they have more of a didactic view of science teaching, that's very teacher-centered, where the teacher gives information to the students who are supposed to memorize the facts, or if they have more of like a discovery or project-based or inquiry type of orientation that is much more student-centered. That influences their decisions. Then also their knowledge of assessment. And so with outdoor education, you have to think about how assessment might differ than it would in the classroom. Their knowledge of available curricular materials and standards and how those can be addressed. Their knowledge of students' understanding of science, so the preconceptions they bring to the classroom, areas where they might struggle, techniques for differentiating instruction for students of different needs. And then also just their knowledge of instructional strategies in general, of what topics and activities are going to be, in this case, most appropriate for teaching in an outdoor setting. So all of these factors influence teachers' decisions to go outside as much as the other factors as Shuman and Ham. And so I've developed this model that is serving as the theoretical framework for my dissertation of science teachers' commitment to outdoor education. And you can see that PCK is in this model, and then also self-efficacy, life experiences, and social norms relating to the school culture. And so I wanted to show with this model too, rather than doing kind of the flow chart like the other theories have used, showing that these do influence one another and they are interrelated, they do overlap, but they are distinct features as well that are influencing teachers' decisions, and they kind of all come together to get to whether or not teachers take their students outside. And so, as you can see, like with self-efficacy, a teacher's confidence in their teaching abilities and their abilities to take their students outside, that's going to, teachers who are more confident are more willing to try new ways of teaching, and that informs their PCK because they learn what strategies work and what don't. And as they successfully implement outdoor education, those experiences influence both their confidence and making them more confident in doing so, and again, their PCK. Life experiences in general add to their skill set for PCK. And then with social norms, observing their colleagues at their school helps them learn new strategies as well. With their life experiences, both personally, whether they spend a lot of time outside as kids or they do now as adults, or professionally, if they've had trainings in outdoor education, those experiences can influence their comfort in nature, which influences their confidence in taking the kids outside. And it also influences their beliefs about how important outdoor education experiences are. But in addition to that, the social norms, so the school culture, are going to influence their beliefs. So if the school culture is very supportive of outdoor learning, then their beliefs will be strengthened and they'll be more likely to potentially implement it. But if they work at a school where outdoor education is not valued and not supported, then their beliefs will be challenged and they might kind of let go of that idea, considering it not worthwhile. However, if they're very confident in their abilities, then we might even see persistence of personal beliefs. And there have been some case studies in the literature of teachers who had been challenged by their principals to stop using outdoor instruction, and they continued doing so anyway because they believed in it so much. So there are those examples out there as well. And then their peers serve as their social models. So if they have other colleagues who are using outdoor instruction and doing so successfully, that's going to help them feel more confident in doing so, and also kind of make them more likely to try to implement outdoor instruction themselves or try new activities in doing so. So all of these factors come together to influence teachers' commitment to outdoor education in this model. And so for my dissertation research, the next steps are going to be testing this model and seeing how these different factors influence teachers specific to outdoor education. So I'm intending to conduct a mixed method study. I will be starting with teacher interviews. And those interviews will especially focus on life experiences and PCK and how teachers who utilize outdoor instruction are doing so, the topics they address, the types of activities they do, how they facilitate learning in outdoor settings, those sorts of discussions. And for teachers who don't influence or don't utilize outdoor instruction, why that happens to be, what they feel like influences that. And so from those responses and also from existing instruments in the environmental education literature, I will be developing a survey. And so these instruments have utilized the model developed by Shuman and Ham, and they really place emphasis on attitudes and on self-efficacy and on subjective norms. So those will really help address those components of the survey. And so that's why in my interview, I'm hoping to really address the life experiences in PCK, so I can also draw teachers' responses into this survey development as well. And so then once the survey is developed, I will be piloting it and validating it, and hopefully eventually outside of my dissertation, utilizing it nationally, so we can really start to get a better picture of how and why teachers are utilizing outdoor instruction. And that can then begin to inform professional development opportunities and teacher experiences as well in pre-service teacher trainings. So they have a list of guiding questions here that are going to help guide this, that basically there's a question for each of the different elements of the model. And then my references are provided here. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact me, and I look forward to talking with you on Saturday. So thank you very much, and I'll see you then.